Hey, it's Scott, and we're going to talk about altars again. This is the fourth video that we have here, and one of the questions that we had is, I love this question, what crosses the line as clutter on an altar? That is a really good question. And I'm smiling because I went through all of my altars and looked at various things and setups that I've done and tried to really look at that neutrally and objectively from outside of my experience, so that I'm just not making a call based solely on what I think an altar should or should not be. If the altar is a cosmological map, right? If we're going to go with that thing, or if it is a little example of what we want to manifest in the world, so it is a little diagram, spiritual diagram, or a grid, if you will, that has those things that say, this is what we want to see in this moon cycle, or this is what we want to see over a year. What are you going to put on that altar, right? That's some of the things that we've talked about before, like what kind of crystals and stones and what goes where and why, right? And I give you some examples of those things. We wouldn't necessarily want to mix maybe a specific healing altar for a person with a big altar that's for all sorts of things, in my opinion. And maybe not. Maybe there's reasons behind that. Again, it's about nuance. It's about asking the questions and seeing and feeling what works and if it makes sense. So clutter opened me up to thinking about cleanliness and order and nature and dirt and all sorts of things there. So what I want to say is this. And I think that this boiled down to an easy response for me on this one. The altar is a reflection, right, of what you want to see in the world, or it's a reflection of a relationship that you have with deity or spirit or whatever you want to call that, or it's a reflection of what you want to accomplish for maybe healing, as I've said. What would clutter do in that situation, right? And maybe what would order do in that situation, or what would organizing what you have on the altar so it looked a little less like clutter and a little more like purpose or joy or love, or what it is that you want to see manifested in the world. I've been to places and spaces where people have said, various things about altars, and I've seen a lot of altars, right, around from many different religious traditions and spaces, local and abroad, and I've created them. It's a meeting place, it's a landing pad, it's an interface, it's a place of conversation and meditation and all those sorts of things. So on the one hand, how that works for you is a component that I want to hold and say, that's what we want to consider. Does the altar work for you? So is it clutter, right? Or is it simply abundance? Or is it simply part of the design, right? And what's respectful to what you're inviting in, right? Because it's not all about us, right? It's an interface, right? There's an aspect of this which is animism, and an invitation. So things are coming and gathering around this altar. Who is it that you're working for, or what is it that you're doing, and is clutter distracting or taking away from that, right? So I'm going to leave that with questions. I looked at some of my altars and I thought, ooh, that's cluttered. I can't see everything that's happening and going on here. There's so many things that's happening. Maybe I need to organize that better. And so I did. In that instance, I felt clutter was a distraction and organization was the thing that was called for. And in certain ways, that tidying up that was happening there, and that is a reference, really helped for me to organize the energy there and create clarity around the purposes that I had created for those altars, right? And I had looked at some altars And for their purposes, they became very busy. I wouldn't say that they were cluttered, right? There was purpose in all of that busyness. So, Bevin, I think that may answer your question. It might leave you with more questions, which is my hope, because I think inquiry is good and allows for us to explore. Remember that altars are a sacred place, and that the work that you're doing there reflects that sacredness. And so if you feel that clutter detracts from that, that when you sit there, it's drawing your attention into like whether I should clean or organize and all of those sorts of questions, maybe the answer to that is yes, maybe the answer to that is no, and that might be a little soul searching on oneself's, looking in on oneself to say like, is that a thing I do? Is that a way that I distract myself from sitting and having a practice or doing magic by wondering that question? Or is it true? Does it actually take away from the purpose that you want to do there? Great question, super question. I hope I answered that for you. I think ultimately, enjoy yourself there. I hope it deepens the mystery for you and opens the door to magic. And thanks for watching. More altar videos soon.